The thing is, in an active shooter situation, how do you survive? You know, especially in a room like this. Somebody walks in, what do? I mean, our options are very limited. You know, we can run. Can we run? Can we get out of here? It just depends. I mean, some of us get out all we want. But you know, the Department of Homeland Security, on their website, they've got a very good course. It's not a course, but very good information. And it's all the same, no matter who gives it to you. It's just a delivery. It's all about run, hide, or fight. Those are the only three options that we're going to have if somebody comes on our campus, comes in our rooms. And that's it. And generally, we don't even think about that until something happens. And across the nation, it's been happening all too often now. So we need to start thinking about that. In your various offices, do you have an escape plan? Do you talk with your coworkers about it? You know, in the event that somebody comes on campus, first off, if you can call the police, call us, do that right away. If you're going to run, get the heck out. I mean, you can't be concerned about everybody else. Your life is primary. So you want to get out if you can. Go ahead and run. If you can't do that, hide. And here, I don't see any place that we can hide. So the only option that we would have, realistically, the only option that we would have is to fight. I mean, if somebody walked in here with a gun, chances are it's going to be an automatic weapon, which you reach out, automatic weapon. Chances are he's going to be chambering probably a magazine holding anywhere from 11 to 13 rounds. One in the chamber. That's 14 shots. What are we going to do in the meantime? Are we going to just stand there and be shot? I hope not. You know, with all the men in class and the women, we just got to come up with a plan together and we just fight. That's the best thing that we can do. But anyway, let's talk about prevention. Is there any way that we can prevent these types of things? I don't know. You know, some of the schools of thought say yes we can, some say no we can't. But it's incumbent upon us, if we see something, to say something. We've got to say something to everybody. If we see something suspicious, if we hear something, if you see something on the web, Facebook, or any kind of social media, let the police know, let them know right away, so we can start to take action and start looking into things. On this campus, we have a threat assessment team, and that's one of the things that we do. And we meet every Tuesday, and we talk about different threats on campus, different people, different things that we've seen. And that's it in a nutshell. Those are the only options that we have, are to run, hide, and to fight. But in the event that something happens, ensure that your cell phones are off. No, I'm sorry, not off, but they're silenced, and ensure that somebody's calling the police. Questions, I'm sure there are a lot of questions that are coming to your minds right now, a lot of thoughts that you have. You know, the question that comes up a lot is that, is there anything that they could have done over there to have prevented that? I don't know. Go right ahead, sir.
Sir, we have public safety officers on campus.
Yes.
And I don't believe they carry sidearms.
They do not. They're not armed. The Department of Public Safety employees, they're an unarmed force. The only thing that they carry are soft weapons. That's your baton, your pepper spray, things of that nature. They do have limited defensive tactics training, and it is limited. We do have an armed response from the Oregon State Police. They're on campus armed. And generally, anytime there's an active shooter that occurs, it's not going to last that long. It's not going to last that long at all. Chances are, by the time the police arrive, it's going to be over with. And also, when the police arrive, they're going to treat us all like we may be the shooter. You know, their primary responsibility is to stop the threat and stop the threat immediately. And that's what they're going to do, go towards the threat. You may have somebody lying down, injured, you may have somebody shot, screaming out. They're going to pass that person up to stop the threat. But once the threat is stopped, then the emergency rescue is going to come in. Go ahead, now's the time to ask questions. I've got all day. I mean, I think about this all the time, and I'm sure you all do too. Now, other questions, thoughts? The most important thing that we can do as a group, collectively, is keep our eyes open, keep our ears open, and just be aware. And develop some type of safety plans in your offices. You know, just, you know, when you're sitting in your offices, just imagine if something happens, where can I hide? Is there a place that you can hide? And if you're going to hide someplace, ensure that it's a place not like this little chair where a bullet can easily go through it, but behind something that's going to protect you, a barrier. Turn the lights out, lock the door, shelve stuff to the door so nobody can get into the room. Things of that nature. Go ahead, Sid, I'm sorry.
In looking over some of the information that's been out there this weekend, it kind of came to mind to me that the people in this room represent what has changed in the last few years to one of the higher risk professions with this sort of activity being in our midst. Is there any school of thought moving forward with that in mind to kind of provide additional sort of training or knowledge or understanding to educators and to people in administrative positions?
I think one of the things that we need to do as a group collectively is to bring this to the forefront. I mean, we can't just wait until a shooting occurs and say, no, now it's time to start thinking about it. I think we should be doing it probably monthly, just to bring it up for 2 to 3 minutes. We just talked about it, so at least we've got something in mind. One of the things I know in the police world and even in the military, generally the way you train is the way you're going to respond. And that's what we need to do. We need to talk about training. And on the side note with that, we've got to start looking at each other. If we see something that's wrong, say something. All of us, we have individual lives that we're concentrating on. We may be having marital problems, we may be having problems with our children, we may be going through other things that we're going to bring those problems to work. And as supervisors and as employees, we just need to look out for each other. If we see something, don't be afraid to say something. You've got to speak up. One of the things that I noticed when I was at the School of the Art Institute as vice president there at Indiana University, one of the things that happened, things would happen on campus, and invariably everybody would know except the police or the Department of Public Safety, because we're telling our friends. We're picking up the telephone and calling Cindy and say, hey, guess what's happening in Chatfield, or what's happening in Denson, as opposed to calling the proper authority so that we can look into it. It's not that we want to be nosy, but we want to be safe. And we've all got to say something. We've all got to step up and act out, so to speak. So if you see something, anything that's strange, and the thing is, you cannot call us enough. That's what we're for. We're 24 hours a day. I believe Sid has my cell phone number. It's on my cards. I mean, I'm available. Call. I know Ted has it. So call us. That's what we want to do. We want to talk about these things. And the thing is, Chuck and I, we will come to individual small groups and talk. Yeah, if it's one-on-one, we want to ensure that the campus is safe. That's what we've got to do. Other questions? I'm sure you have them. Please ask. Go ahead.
Well, it's hard to plan for an insane moment, so.
It is.
And I guess one of my questions is, do you work with counseling and psych services or some other entity that can teach, primarily our students are on the floor all the time. We're on the floor a lot, but we've got, with the MU, we have several hundred students that work for us.
Yes.
And all over campus, particularly in the food services areas. So is there someone on campus that does some training? What do you look for in someone that's acting? I mean, do we just trust our intuition that somebody's acting strangely? Or are there things that we should be looking for, behaviors that we should be looking for?
I think one of the things, and I'm not speaking as a psychologist, although my sister is, my best friend is, and we do work with these people on campus. One of the things that we can do, though, is just that behavior that's uncomfortable, that behavior that makes you feel uncomfortable. The thing is, you've got to trust your instincts, trust your guts. If you feel that it's wrong, it's probably wrong. And then we can get the appropriate help for that individual, and we can talk about that. And the thing is, a lot of times what we do is that we'll see somebody acting out or doing something, we'll say to ourselves, well, I don't want to say anything because it's going to interfere with his job or cause problems on his job. But if we don't, what's the consequence? So we just got to speak up. Go with your gut, I would say.
And so when we're calling in, when we're teaching our staff to call into public safety, what are the questions that you're going to be, what are the things you're going to be looking for primarily? How do you want the situation described to you?
Well, we're going to ask the question, is the behavior violent? Is it threatening? Are you feeling that you're confined and you can't escape? Things like that. It's going to be more about the behavior. Is it threatening behavior? Is he or she screaming? Are they doing things that just make you feel uncomfortable? And I'm sure you all have been around that person that just makes you, it's just a feeling you get that something's not right. And you just got to trust your instincts and go with it and let the experts on campus decide. Then, like I said, we have a threat assessment team. We also have a student care team where we can look at the individual or recommend services for that individual. And you got to remember also when we're dealing with students, a lot of them are away from home for the very first time. Just in that age group, 17 to 25, I'm away from home now. I got all of these freedoms that I can do now. And now Oregon's telling me that I can smoke marijuana, I can drink, I can do all of these things which are going to confuse my thinking. So, I mean, we've got to think in terms like that. There are services that can be offered to these students and to the faculty and staff. We have services on campus. We just got to say something. Go with your gut. And I would imagine with you all in here, if you feel something, your gut is going to be that first instinct. It's going to be right. And I noticed when I was a trooper on the road, every time my gut would tell me something, 99.9% of the time, I was correct. To either stop or to look into it a little bit further or to use a little bit more caution. And that's what we have to do, collectively. Questions?
I just have one question. My daughter, I was talking with her over the weekend. She was a nurse in a hospital, and she was telling me that they have a training that they have to go through every year, watch a video, take a test, that kind of thing. Is there anything like that available that for us and for our student staff?
Yes, we do have videos. We have videos on the Run, Hide, Fight from the Department of Homeland Security. It's on YouTube. It's a very good video, actually. I mean, it just goes through the scenarios and talks about those things. Also, we have a very good resource on campus with Michael Bemberger. He's very good. He does presentations. We do them sometimes together. And as a matter of fact, Deb has given us, she's enabling us to put on monthly, what do we call it, Deb? I can't remember.
Information tables?
Information in the quad, we talk about just that, preparing for emergency. And one of the things, I was talking with my psychologist friend yesterday, as a matter of fact, he said, Denson, have we developed a plan in the event that something happens with our families? And I said, no, we haven't. When we were in Indiana, we did, but here we haven't. If an earthquake happens or something, even with a mass shooting, if something happens, do we have a plan? How are we going to contact our loved ones, let them know that we're okay? We don't think about it until the last minute, and at the last minute, those cell towers, they're going to be tied up. So what are we going to do? Do we have a staging area that we're going to meet afterwards to say that, we're okay? Things like that. But one of the things that we can do, we can come monthly and just talk about these things, and I think we need to, as opposed to waiting until it happens and then we all get together and say, now we got to do something. And that's what happens on any campus. It's always after the fact. Now the question is, what are we going to do? But we should already have that in mind. So, other questions, thoughts, comments? And remember, we're in this together. Because if something happens on campus and I'm in the room with you all, I'm not armed. So I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm going to have to either run, hide, or fight. So we're in it together. But we do need to think about it, we do need to train, and we do need to present those videos. And the next time I come, I will bring them. Other questions, thoughts, comments? And I know you have other things to do, but I mean, this is so important. It really is. You have to think about those plans. And even if something happens right now, do you know where your evacuation area is? Where do you go? And I'm sure you do, I would hope so, but go ahead.
What kind of information sharing do you have on campus? If something happens, occurs, how are we going to find out?
Interesting question. If something happens, if it's an emergency, there's going to be an emergency notification. Generally, Chuck or I will send it out, or somebody in dispatch will send it out. It'll be emergency notification. It's going to come, and we're having problems right now with, we're not having problems with the system. The system is not doing what we want it to do. So we're looking at a new system. There was a number of emails that came out last week about the Ray Fest and about other things that were occurring. They came out via our emergency notification system, and that's the system that we would be using. But one of the things that we're finding is that for young people, it's not very practical for them to look at their emails, although I'm looking at mine all day long. So we're going to probably send it out via text. Well, actually, if there's an emergency, we're going to send it out through all the mechanisms: text, email, and telephone. All of those mechanisms will come out. And we're hoping in January we'll have a much faster, much better system. I think we will. We're in the final stages of it right now. And again, if something happens, you've all got to be talking to each other. And you've got to be making that call to the police, dialing in 911. And you've got to be aware of your surroundings. Where am I? How do I get out? And push comes to shove. What about windows? You just got to think in terms of your survival. That's what it's about. Yes, ma'am.
Denson, how can we help our students and ourselves not use our bias when we use, so we're calling in to make a report. How do we not use our bias to identify the individuals in certain characteristics of culture or religion, or how do we really get to what the person looks like versus what we believe them to be?
There's a conversation coming up on that. Is it today or tomorrow? But anyway, one of the things, we've got to be realists. There's so much happening in this world today that sometimes our biases, we want to set them aside, but if it's actual and it's real, if we feel like that individual or that person or whatever's happening is threatening, you just got to report it as it is. Is it a black male that's doing something that's threatening? You've got to report it just as that. If it's Hispanic, if it's Middle Eastern, I remember some of the emails that we sent out it talked about a Middle Eastern person with a strong Middle Eastern accent. Well, half the campus became alarmed about that, saying, well, you are targeting and identifying one individual. But no, we weren't. We took the information exactly as the police gave it to us and exactly as the victim gave it to us. So if that's what you're telling me, if those are your descriptors, that's how we're going to put it out. And we have to put the biases aside and look into the reality. Is there any basis to it? I hope that answered your question.
Truthfully, it calls out the very reason I think we need to come up with a system of helping our students identify outside of those particular characteristics. Because again, a light-skinned, dark individual could be of many different heritages, backgrounds, cultures, religions, so forth, but we're putting a specific individual culture on somebody, and then again, then it does feel like we're victimizing that entire culture or that entire group of students. And
I would have to disagree, because I've had this conversation extensively with a number of people. And when I was in Chicago, we were always putting out, now imagine, I'm working downtown Chicago, 100,000 students here, there, everywhere, and something happens on campus. You put out the descriptor, you're saying a male black. Well, that describes me. First off, you're saying male black, there's two of us in the room. Now you've already described two people. But now you go a little bit further with a descriptor. You say a male black wearing a blue shirt with a brown jacket and a tie. Now you've identified an individual as opposed to a class. And those are the things that we have to do. We've got to have those exact descriptors so that we're not classifying a whole group of people, but we're identifying an individual.
thank you, that's what I
Okay. And that's what we need to do. We can't just gather everybody into one table and say, this is it. We've got to definitively describe that individual and also the action that's occurring. So keep in mind, we have to come together to be safe. And if you see something again, say something. We've got to. That's the only way that we can survive together. Other questions, thoughts, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Can we talk for a second about the student care team? What sort of communications should we be looking at when we're working with our students that would be of concern, hopefully far enough in advance of a violent incident, but that would at least be able to call people into awareness? So injustice, collecting, a sudden lack of interest or undependability, and what's the
There are a number of things that the student care team looks into, and Chris Winter, she's your best resource on that. But Chuck and I, we sit on the student care team as well. You might look at those things. I mean, as a student, is he or she depressed? What about their grades? Are they falling? Are there social activities? Can they get along with people? Things like that. You might want to refer to the student care team. Are they having issues with grades? Are they having problems with maintaining a place to stay? Things like that. It could be a number of things. I mean, refer to the student care team and let them decide whether or not we need to take further action. And one of the things that the student care team do, we will reach out to the individual student and say, is there something that we can do to help you to survive in this environment? And that goes with the threat assessment team as well. Correct.
So just really quick for me, just the mechanism is like how, like where is the actual form to submit something to the care team, as well as if there's a threat, is that always filtered through public safety, or is there some other app that I can log into that goes somewhere that it's, so is it always public safety, or is there a form for the care team? Both of those, like are there just regular solid mechanisms that I can always go to? I think would be important for me to know.
I don't believe there's a form.
It can be as simple as
A telephone call.
email, telephone call.
And is there a student care team email?
There is student care team email and a credit assessment team email.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we find those?
Those are right in the directory. So if you go in and start typing, go and find someone, put in credit assessment team.
And general is going to hit the whole team, and we'll talk about it, put it on our agenda. And like I said, we meet every Tuesday. Every Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning we meet. And general will have an agenda with students or things that are occurring, and we'll talk about them. And I'm sure if we assessment, we're probably going to have the shooting on the top agenda. Other questions, concerns? Go ahead.
So when Deb was asking about what type of information you would want to report to me, you said things about how someone might be feeling threatened. If someone is hearing someone talk about things like, you better not come to school tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Or like things like that,
Absolutely.
where it's like,
Yeah.
maybe they're not feeling physically threatened,
Right.
but people are saying strange things. Does that go to?
Yes.
Does that go directly to public safety, or is there another place where that should go?
It should come to the threat assessment team, but I mean, it can come to public safety, and we'll look into it further as well. Yeah. And you gotta remember, sometimes those comments that are being made, sometimes people will just lash out and say something, but still it needs to be investigated and looked into. Somebody, like, it's just like you said, I wouldn't come to school tomorrow. Well, that would bring a red flag for me. We want to talk to that student or that person and find out what's going on. What did you mean by that? And those are the questions we're gonna ask. What do you mean? Things like that. Just look into it a little bit further. I mean, an ounce of prevention, you know, as the old adage goes, is worth a pound of cure. That's what we've got to do. Step into it. And remember, we're not offended by the questions that you ask. We're not offended by the number of times that you want us to come. We're not offended by the number of calls that you make to us. That's how we keep the campus safe. By you all calling us as often as you need or you feel you need to. Not only that, remember again, Chuck and I, this is what we do. We can come to you individually and sit down and talk with you or talk to your group. That's what we want to do. We want to be out here. You need to know us and we need to know you.
And you're gonna see us wandering around, we may show up at the office and you go, what's wrong? Oh, nothing, we're here, what can we do to help you?
Exactly.
And
That's it. Yes, sir.
In the back of my mind, when events like this really capture our emotions, you know, deeply, I sometimes wonder, can you speak to the possible overreaction we may have and dwelling on things that should be addressed but maybe are rare instead of actually focusing on more active, like more common threats. I mean, I'm so involved, I don't know what to think about it,
Yeah.
but I worry that, is there a risk of hyper-focusing on something that's extremely emotional?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it is because in the case when I was patrolling as a police officer get killed, then, you know, the heightened sense of alarm was in everybody's mind. The next car that I stopped, it could be me. And when we're thinking now is on a campus shootings, the next campus, it could be us. And that's just the world that we live in. And I think what we have to do is have forums like this. We have to have town hall meetings, so to speak. That's what we would always do, have a town hall meeting, and we just put our emotions out there. We talk about it. We talk about the reality of it. Could it happen to us? I mean, is that real? Is it a possibility? Yeah, it is. But what are we going to do? We just have to talk about it and collectively as a group come up with solutions. And again, I mean, we're going to see that backpack lying in the hallway and we're going to become all alarmed because somebody dropped the backpack and a bomb went up. But we've got to think in those terms. I don't think we're going to be hyper. It's just a matter of being cautious. And we have to do that now in the world that we live in. It's unfortunate, but we got to. Don't let me off easy.
Well, you say to storm him, the gunman, and that's kind of tough to do. The first 5 people to storm him are going to be dead, and it's going to turn the other crowd away. So if everyone picks up a chair, I mean, he doesn't get a chance to throw. I mean, we can rip a chair across the room pretty easy.
Well, and that's what you do, yeah.
You know, to storm the gunman, you're just basically dead instantly.
Well, you know, the thing is, I can't answer whether we're going to, that's difficult.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is, if somebody comes into this room, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Are we just going to sit here and wait our turn? You know, I mean, are we going to wait our turn, you know, let him go ahead and fire. Now it's time for him to reload. We're just going to say, okay, I'm next. What are we going to do? And I'm not being callous. I think in my mind, I want to go home to see my family. I would like to live a little bit longer. So, I mean, we've got to do something. You know, and the way the Department of Homeland Security talks about it, the way it's going to be presented by the police, the choices, those are the choices. Either we've got to run, we've got to hide, or we've got to fight. We've got to do something. You know, the response time on campus, I think, from police is probably going to be at a maximum. What do you think, Chuck? About 2.5 minutes at a maximum. But, you know, they arrive on the scene, they're going to get out the car, got their weapons, they got to run up the stairs, get to us. I mean, a lot of damage could be done by the time they get here. So we've got to do something. You just have to think in those terms. So, yes, ma'am.
So if you are storming someone, this may be a weird question, but is there a way to do it so that you maximize your chance of surviving even if you do get shot?
Hello, I'm Spencer Collier, Director of the Alabama Department of Home.
That's the answer. That's a good question. I mean, we'll have a police response, and we'll have them address it as well. But from our perspective, if I'm gonna storm somebody, I'm not gonna do it this way, I'm gonna blade my body. You know, I'm gonna come at an angle, I'm gonna throw, I'm gonna get on the floor, I'm gonna do whatever I can. And chances are that first person that throws something or something happens is gonna distract. It may be enough to distract them where we can jump on them and take them out. That's what we need to do. I hope I've answered your question, and I hope I haven't alarmed you, but we've got to think in those terms. We've got to think about, what are we going to do if it happens? What are you going to do if an earthquake occurs? You know, for us, from the north, our thing was, what are we going to do when that blizzard hits? And we know it was going to hit. What are we going to do? How are we going to get home? How are we going to notify our families? So what are you going to do? Just think of terms like that, you know, an evacuation plan. How are we going to contact our families? Things like that. Just keep it at the forefront of your mind. So if you see something, you know to call right away. Questions, comments? I know you got a lot to do. And I'm sure you'll have more questions when we leave. You'll say, dog, I should have asked that question, or I should have said that. Call us.
Sid will give it to us, yeah.
Yeah.
Load him up and have coffee with him and he can.
Yeah. And seriously, and we can come back and we can come individual and sit down and we can just talk about it. You know, and I think one of the things, the best thing that we can do right now is to talk. So at least we've got in our minds what we're going to do. Like we talk about damage.
And we don't want to wait till something else happens. Let's keep the conversation going. So.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. It was our pleasure. And please keep calling us. Keep calling us and ask the hard questions, and we'll find the answers. And we're in this together, remember that.